Yes, sir.
Trying to understand it. Budget and appropriation fund, just what we just talked about. If he's appointed by the governor, reports to the governor, why would anything defects have to go through DHS?
Well, the one thing I mentioned just earlier is commission as far as rulemaking,
No, I get that.
have that, but also budget it was discussed, and in fact, I addressed this with Bobby as to a preference he felt as a way of handling the budgeting appropriations, we'll call it. And he felt it'd be a better way to leave that appropriations coming through DHS as opposed to having a separate department appropriation just for DFACs.
Let me take a step further.
Yes, sir.
Why do the defects, rules, and regulations have to be approved by DHS?
Because there's a board for, because DHS has a board, and somebody else step in here if you don't agree with this, but DHS has a board, DFACS doesn't have a board, so DHS has the board, so the actual rules and regulations for that agency are approved by that board.
What we would do, Senator, is the board itself, the advisory board, would really make the recommendations for whatever rules are to be changed or implemented.
That's my question.
Yeah.
With your advisory board, they're gonna go to
Has to go.
a real board, and all they're gonna do is get a rubber stamp. Is that what we're doing? I mean, that's fine. Is that what we're doing?
Maybe,
basically?
but it also, to say, having it set up this way allows legislators to serve in that role too.
I'm not
Which is
gonna
good.
enjoy that committee.
Not me.
Bobby, from a federal funding standpoint, does leading it in DHS open up more avenues for you, or?
I don't think it really impacts us one way or another, frankly. There are defined sets of federal funds that come to child welfare regardless. I'll tell you, the reason that there are a couple reasons that I recommended that we not go to a separate department at this point in time. One of the things is looking at the staffing needs and the significant needs that we have. There's a huge price tag for that. At this point in time, we have worked so well together as Commissioner Horton and myself. There has not been a disagreement regarding how we want to do anything. And if there was, we do have the opportunity to talk with the governor's office and have them make the final decision on that. But we also know that if you start splitting departments apart, you lose the economies of scale that are achieved within the department to have things that are common administrative functions like budget. So at this point in time, I felt like given the needs that we have, we didn't need to expend any funds on trying to break apart a department when we could be expending those funds toward real needs like caseworkers.
Isn't there some alignment between the services the other services that are provided by DHS and the services provided by DFACS? Aren't you often serving the same family?
Health areas.
Yes, we often do have overlap. The other thing this presents us an opportunity to do is to have a regular seat at the table on the leadership team for DHS, and that is not typical for separate departments. So it gives us an opportunity to take part in all the discussions around the department, have child welfare heard at that table as opposed to having it be an interagency conversation.
And so in addition to budget, I'm assuming you share HR services?
HR is the other function. There's also the Office of the Inspector General that performs a number of functions for the variety of agencies in the department. So I think there are really good reasons not to do it at this point in time. And I think having the opportunity to try this structure, and if it becomes a problem, then we have an opportunity to look at it again in the future.
I might,
You don't get your own grants.
I have in
DFACS do go get its own grants versus fee.
I'm not aware of any independent grants right now, only formula grants that are given to any state. I think one of the things that we've got to do a better job of is seek additional federal funding when appropriate and private funding. at the
Well, I was
Department
thinking
of
more of the private funding aspect, that's what I was thinking of.
At the Department of Early Care and Learning, we came up with several $1 million over 4 years to support our quality rating system. And I think the very same thing is possible in the discussions I've had with other, the same private funders basically that fund these child issues. I think there's a lot of potential for that. What it takes, however, is for us to lay out a good, solid plan that people can get behind and they can see their part in. So I think at this point, we've not done that well, and we have to do better.
Bobby, on that issue, would you see the state advisory board, I mean, many donors, I know are gonna be looking at the possibility to invest in this, but they're gonna wanna know, who am I investing my money in, and how am I going to be sure there's good stewardship of it and accountability for that? Would you see the state advisory board playing some role there, or, I mean, typically, if, you know, there's some enterprise or entity that donors can go to, especially large foundations, and know that they can hold somebody accountable to get the results of what they're donating to?
There are a number of ways to do that. I think what having a state advisory board does for us in regard to seeking private funds is that it gives us a body of people who are well respected in their communities that can help us access local sources. I think as far as the fiduciary agent, there are ways to go about that. Other departments have foundations that are attached to them, so we can consider that. The other thing that we did at DECAL was to locate a well-respected nonprofit that became a fiduciary for us, and also expanded our capability to work within local communities. So I think there are a number of options that we can follow.
We looked at a number of states too, and we looked at what was being done in other jurisdictions, other states, and certainly there are sister states in the southeast. And we found a mixed bag. There's probably about 5 states that we looked at that have a separate, totally separate board, but most of them do fall under a body and organization such as DHS. And the ones that stand alone, I'm sure are doing fine, but we felt that maybe just a part change is better than before we go the full way to see how that operates. Come back and look at it.
Ashley and I had the opportunity to attend a conference recently that was hosted by COA, and 2 issues had bubbled out of that that related to legal type issues. One had to do with the length of time that a case may take to come before the court because of how it is kind of ranked, if it's not a first degree type thing, if it's, you know, child molestation doesn't have to be given the same kind of weight that murder and rape do. And when those lengths of times occur with young children, very often testimonies change because families can get involved. And then also young children being made to be put on the stand versus video testimony. We know that that's still occurring. And what Judge Walker had shared was that actually neither one of those should be occurring. So we think that there's some opportunity within the legal and regulatory kind of subcommittee recommendations to review how the training and dissemination is going out to judges. Because based on what we heard at this conference, not all of them are aware. I don't know, Ashley, if you want to add to that. But
And I would, Judge Walker, I haven't talked to you about the issue. There's some language in the legislation now that my recollection is that for a criminal case, the child could be required to testify. So I think that's what we're referencing.
That says they may testify by video to
Yeah.
protect them from trauma.
Absolutely, but it's the discretion of the judge, and that's the discussion that
right,
came up, is that it's may.
it's the discretion of the judge part that makes it difficult, because you could have a 5-year-old little girl who's been brutally raped, and at the discretion of the judge be put on the stand, which we think is not right.
Or if defense counsel argues against it, obviously, I think that weighs into the judge's decision depending on, but that was just one of the issues that was identified.
The other is this length of time issue where, because, you know, rape cases, murder cases, whatever, you could have a sexual molestation case where the child has been penetrated, but for whatever reason, it's not being prosecuted as a rape, it's being prosecuted as child molestation, and it falls to a lower tier. And so the length of time to get it in front of a judge can be longer, and that's when family members can sometimes get into the child's head and testimony can be recanted. So we feel like there needs to be some mechanisms in place to help protect the children even more. And I don't know how we exactly word that, but this bubbled out at this conference we were at the other day, and there, Bobby, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but.
I think they're both issues, and I frankly have not thought about it. I probably reserve until we have an opportunity to talk about it.
So I think there may be a few more things we need to add, on the legal side.
Yeah, and we've got Betsy Howerton here, which I'll recognize, right? She's with our Legislative Council Office and has worked with us on these issues we're talking about as far as the governance side of the DFACs, and Betsy's a real good resource for information with what the law provides. We'll make note of that.
Can I just add one other thing? And I appreciate your leadership because you are so good at this work. One of the things we just briefly touched on, and I don't know if it's appropriate to include in here, but I feel like the public should be aware that these recommendations are not meant to address privatization in any format.
Right.
You know, that's a separate avenue. If there's been recalled, there's pilot projects, et cetera. So I don't know if it's appropriate to include that as a recommendation or a minute, but just to be aware that, you know, that's not being skipped over and ignored. There's
Well,
different avenues that are being pursued.
I think what I've addressed in conversations, this came out as a potential proposal at the end of the last legislative session. My concern is to go back to this legislative session without having addressed what is happening with these pilot programs or privatization issues. There's been a lot of concern, well, why didn't you do something about that or address it? I think it just needs to be upfront about it as far as the transparency before we get back to legislative sessions in 2015. I hope the other legislators in here have thoughts about it, but I know that was one of the things that was hammered home to both bodies. You know, let's don't do anything now. Let's get through the session. Let somebody be put together as a group and study this issue. And toward the end of the session, there was talk about setting up, I think, 3 pilot programs. We changed it back to 2, which is fine, but we haven't done anything, so that is going to be an issue.
Karen, do you want to maybe address that for a moment? Or not?
I don't know how much, I can't address that in detail because of the details of the RFP. If we rebid it, we have to be careful just from a legal standpoint about how much.
Well, I think it's saying we are bidding.
I think that-
I think a lot of people don't know.
Right,
that
right.
it's
I think
being-
that,
Yeah.
That's also, Bobby's probably better to answer this question than I am, but I would say in that, you know, really this work was so critical, and we wanted to really see where this council came down and what the recommendations were, and I think that's important before moving forward with the privatization pilot, and so, you know, we'll be reevaluating that as we take these recommendations into consideration and talk to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.